p.m. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act, notice was given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a regular meeting on Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021 at 5 p.m. at the Brownsville Public Library Main Branch Meeting Room located at 2600 Central Boulevard, Brownsville, Texas. Pursuant to Section 551.127 Texas Government Code, one or more commissioners or employees may attend this meeting remotely using video conferencing technology. The video and audio feed of the video conferencing equipment can be viewed and heard by the public at the address posted above as the location of the meeting. Members of the public, employees, and the City Commission may join via the WebEx teleconference meeting link provided at the City of Brownsville Agenda Center. This notice and meeting agenda are posted online at the Agenda Center. The members of the public wishing to participate in through WebEx teleconference can join at the phone numbers provided on the agenda. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. It is now 5:07 p.m. Mary, you may call the meeting to order. I show that we have Mayor Mendez, present in person, Commissioner Cowan, present in person, Commissioner Volonsky, present in person, and Commissioner Del Santos, present in person, and Commissioner Tedrow, present in person. Commissioner Gowan and Commissioner Cardenas are absent.
Thank you, Lori. I'll now call the meeting to order.
Our next item is invocation.
Let's all stand for the prayer and remain standing for the pledge. Let's pray. Father God, once again, we thank you for the many blessings in the city of Brownsville and for our nation. Lord God, we ask you to draw all of the hearts of the people of this nation back to you. Draw us to your heart individually and as a nation so that we can receive the revelation we need to deal with the many unusual things that are happening in our nation right now. We ask you to lead and guide us. And Lord, today we ask you to lead and guide the voters in these last couple of hours of voting concerning our Texas Constitution and other things that are on the ballot. Lead and guide our mayor here today, Tria Mendez, and each of the city commissioners and everybody presenting, Lord, for the best for the city of Brownsville. And help us to remain unified around what's best. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Now let us take a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what has been spoken. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. You want to pledge? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Our next item is our public comment period. Our first public comment form was received by Al Villarreal. Al, are you present?
He is. Al, welcome. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Villarreal.
3 minutes.
Sir.
I can do this in 2. First of all, my name is Al Villarreal. I'm proud to be the CEO of IBC Bank here in Brownsville. First of all, I want to thank the Mayor and Commissioner for your public service and helping to promote our city and moving it in a very prosperous way in the future. Here at IBC Bank, we've been founded on the border. We've had a history of over 50 years advocating for border issues. And so that is one of our passions. And one of the things that we try to do is to provide information and facilitate discussion provide some facts, figures, and statistics to people that have, that are making decisions that are governing us. We recognize that the city of Brownsville, Matamoros, we're really one city, just in two different countries. And we also understand that the issues that have been confronting the border are not really issues that were created in South Texas, but were issues created in Washington. And so we understand that at the city level, many of the things I want to talk about are not really something that the city has complete control over, but are federal issues. And so we just want to make sure that we provide you with some of the information that if you cross-connect with any representatives at the federal level, if we can be of service, we want to be there. We want to be a resource. We work and live in this community. It's important to us. So I went ahead and have copies for you of a white paper that's been updated by our chairman, Mr. Dennis Nixon. It's Common Sense Solutions to the Border. There are 7 recommendations contained in this white paper. I would like to discuss 3 of them, time permitting. The first one has to do with adopting a clean river plan. There's a lot of invasive and non-native plants that have infiltrated the Rio Grande. Salt cedar consumes, a mature salt cedar will consume 100 gallons of water a day. Border Patrol environmentalists agree that it should be eradicated. It will provide more visibility and better protection for the Border Patrol and allow this for a safer environment. The second thing is in regards to the reformed immigration policy. Studies have shown that it takes 2.1, birth rate of 2.1 for per female to sustain U.S. population. Last year was the second lowest population growth that we had in our nation. Currently, the United States will experience a birth rate of 1.7. Without a growing workforce, the economy simply is not going to grow. This country was built on immigrants. We want a sensible, common sense immigration policy that allows workers to grow our economy. I'd also like to note that immigrants have a tendency to create their own businesses at a ratio of 2 to 1 compared to native-born Americans. And the last issue is recently the Department of Justice has authorized 100 immigration judges. It's still not enough. There's over 1 million cases that are backlogged, and the average wait time is 960 days. And so with those are 3 of the 7 issues that are in here. But if I can be of any service for providing with any information, as you talk to our federal representatives, we believe that it's very important that local people have a say-so in decisions that are affecting our local community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next public comment form was received from Eli Taylor. Not sure I'm pronouncing.
Ellie Day. Is Ellie online? I don't believe he showed up to the last meeting either.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next item, work session. Item 1, Brownsville Animal Regulation Care Center Quarterly Report.
Honorable Mayor, members of the commission, good evening. I want to begin by introducing our Assistant Director of Public Health at the Brownsville Animal Rescue. Sorry, got nervous there. You know, the search for finding the right individual to lead us over the animal shelter was long and wide. And I'm very happy as we begin our first Public Health Department Advisory Board meeting and then the update tonight that you're going to start to see really a real movement forward in the way that Brownsville has done things, in particular to its hurricanes. Tonight, specifically, is really a brief presentation where we're at with the animal shelters we're moving forward. And also we have an agenda item on the ordinance. So without any further delay, Ms. Jacqueline Hernandez will be presenting tonight on that.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is my first rodeo here with you guys, but I am excited to share the information that I have. I'm a huge data nerd, so I hope you appreciate the numbers I share with you. But in specific, this is just kind of a time capsule story, if you will, one small chapter of the big picture, where we were, where we are, where we'd like to be at the shelter. So I'll go ahead and if you could get the next slide. Don't be overwhelmed by the number of numbers. Again, I am a data nerd. So this specific slide here, we're talking about the last 3 months in 2021. So it's July to September 2021. What I want you guys to focus on here is the number of animals coming into our shelter. It's divided by cat and dog, and the number of animals leaving our shelter. These are what we consider positive outcomes: adoption, rescue, all the good feel things. So while we're not striving as high as we have before, our numbers are still pretty good. If you'll move to the next slide, please. Yep. Now, this is 3 years in a glance, year to date. So that is going to be January 1st through October 21st when I ran this report. What I wanted you guys to see here is the differences in years. Obviously, this is an unfair advantage to the shelter because 2020 we had what we'd like to call our lovely pandemic, lovely, luckily, of course. So in 2019, you'll see we were doing phenomenal. Our intake, however, it was high. We were able to continue our positive outcomes. There were, however, significant numbers in our euthanasia, something that not everybody likes to talk about, but it is the true reality of what we do. So you'll see here, our intake in 2021 has decreased by 26%. Which doesn't seem like a large number, but it is in our small shelter. We feel every impact of that percentage. However, our positive outcomes, again, as rescue, adoption, that can also include any additional outcome return to owner. That has also gone down 20%. So what we're thinking of now is why? Where's that number coming from? How could we increase that number? So that's what I want the takeaway to be in this one. How can we increase our numbers? And then this here is current, what is happening right now this year. It's a little blurry, I apologize. But what I want the takeaway to be is the number of animals coming into our shelter, which is 4,217, compared to the number of animals being adopted. So when we think, what's happening? Why aren't these numbers increasing? We think about how we are currently not open to the public, that being a huge drastic change. How can we increase those numbers? And so that's where rescue comes into place. We're branching out, we're reaching out to new rescue partners further than where we have before. We're working heavily on return to owners. Return to owners, because at the end of the day, this pet came from somewhere, hopefully a loving home. How can we reunite them? And then how can we put forth efforts into our community services past end of life services, which is the basic care that we currently have. So in the next slide, I've only been here a month, but my biggest strive right for now is we branched out to network partners to include Best Friends Animal Society. So what does that all entail? Opportunity for grants, opportunity for growth. And this isn't just locally, it's nationally. So just in the last 2 months, they have donated almost $8,000 to us specifically for adoptions, for rescue, and for microchipping. Again, all these things help us to help our livelihoods. We have also, if you'll see here, it'll also include such things as adoption, spay and neuter, not just for the animals in our shelter, but for the animals in our community. And of course, intake prevention. Is there something that we can do to help the community not have that animal come to a shelter? Do you need a bag of food? Did you need medical advice? How can we help you help your animal? So again, these are just small snippets of what we hope the future to bring. And with the partnerships that we are already starting to engage in to continue those positive numbers. Hope for the Holidays is one example of the programs that we will now be introducing and hopefully committing to long-term. This will happen November through December, where Blue Buffalo, a dog food company, will also donate adoption fee prices as well as dog food and help us create that bond that we might be lacking due to not being open to the public, not having correct or great marketing strategies. So having a big number like Blue Buffalo behind us will definitely help. And then one more slide that, there we go, that we were going to talk about is, oh, there we go, the ordinance, but I will let Dr. Rodriguez take over from here.
Sure.
Honorable Mayor Commissioners, the other item tonight before you is a reading on ordinance 2021-47-H, which will be a public hearing and first action on really what the changes in project and scope of this ordinance are as follows. We've added a subsection 8, which will increase the number of voting members from 9 to 11 by adding 2 additional citizens to the board. The second change to the ordinance will be subsection B, and that's to change the number of term years from 4 to a 2-year terms. This is in accordance with the policy that we've had on boards, and this amendment will align with the current BARC committee bylaws set in 2013. This also falls under one of the mission pillars of quality of life. See that presented later tonight. We appreciate your attention to this tonight.
Dr. Rodriguez, and Jacqueline, welcome. I do have a concern, and that is the shelter not being open to the public. What is the reason for that, and when do you plan to open it to the public?
So the shelter is open to the public, but it's open by appointment.
Okay, because you said it wasn't open to the public.
I meant like as a general, yes. I'm sorry.
Okay, so when will you open it up without appointments?
We've actually have a reopening strategy. We're working with Hoyle for our opening strategy that we have as a city. And there's two reasons why we haven't been open to the public as pre-COVID. One of the reasons is coming post-COVID, like many city departments, we find ourselves having the staffing levels to be able to adequately treat people coming into the shelter. So we're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to have more of a social online presence to facilitate the adoption and curbside adoptions as one of our new strategies. And we do remain open as a shelter, but it's by appointment, and that's seen as not truly open because pre-COVID, you could walk in almost at any time. So one of the conversations that we have had already is to look at what our staffing levels need to be so that we really could have a full opening strategy.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot about a strategy, but I'm not hearing a timeline.
So with this is we're 30 days in with a new director. I'm hoping that within the next quarter, we're opening probably in the next 30 to 60 days. But within the next quarter, we really hope to have a more permanent strategy on how we're moving forward with Chameleon and other plans for adoption.
And the board meetings are every quarter?
They're set by ordinance at least twice a year, but we do report quarterly, and the bylaws that we have on hand is to report quarterly reports. So we also aim to come to you guys, to the city commission on a quarterly basis.
Commissioner Tetra, you're on that, right?
I recently was appointed to the board by the commission, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to work with you all. And I'm so excited for all of the change and wonderful things that are coming to that, to our shelter. One of the things that I really, really want to focus on is the spay and neuter, because we can microchip all day, but if we have these new litters being dropped off daily, sometimes it's 3 litters a day, there's no end in sight. So that's one of the things that I just really want to ask you to focus on, is looking for the grants to help, spay and neuter these pets that are out there on the street, not by their choice, but because that's just the way it is. And so that I really want to aggressively tackle and leave my lasting imprint on that. And I can't adopt any more dogs, so I keep, giving thousands of dollars to the shelter to let you all give these dogs away. But I'm just so grateful to work with you all and to be a part of this, and to the commission for letting me sit on that board. And I know that we're going to make a really good difference. And I know we have a board member, Brian Martinez, here with us. I'm so excited to serve with. I keep saying I'm so excited because puppies, this is a chance for us to really make a change. And thank you for working with us, and I look forward to it. And I hope we can really do the city of Brownsville good. These pets are so deserving of homes.
Likewise.
I know Commissioner Tetra is busy, but I'm sure she can do more than 2 meetings a year.
Absolutely, yes. I'm committed.
For the puppies, I will.
Can I ask a question? So the intake of dogs and cats is more or less similar, but the actual adoption and rescue of cats is a lot lower than dogs. Is there an explanation or some hypothesis as to why the difference?
A couple of things. COVID not only put a strain on our visitors, if you will, while we were closed, but also with including rescue nationwide. There's just been a drastic change. 90%, well, that's a bold number, 70% of the animals that are being transported from the South Texas region to our northern partners are actually being flown by planes, by groups, for example, like Dogs Macopa, that we just recently decided to partner with. So it's one pilot for free. Gas prices have also skyrocketed for them. So it's been a long struggle for the regions that they are helping, to include South Texas. So that's just one example. Another thing is, for example, our resources at the time had been limited due to staffing to provide the kind of information that rescues might need. For example, heartworm testing. Some states don't allow heartworm positive dogs to move up north. Excuse me. So because we didn't have that information, that was another bump in the road, if you will, but that has since changed. Our staff is trained to do heartworm testing. Just recently, we had 30 dogs pulled last weekend to head up north. They just needed a heartworm test. So that's something that we just changed to get those numbers back up and ramping.
But why are the numbers for the cats lower?
Oh, I'm sorry, cats. Historically speaking, nationwide, cats just, there aren't as many rescues for cats as there are dogs. Also, cats produce a lot of litters much quicker. So the numbers coming in don't equal out to the numbers that we're able to produce. So again, things like spaying will be really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And while I have you here, sorry, I thought of one more request. If we can, and if you could consider it, maybe opening on a Saturday, opening the shelter on a Saturday is really important to me, and I feel like it would make a really big difference in the numbers. I have so many families that are, available only on the weekend, and I think that would be really good if we could maybe trade a Monday for a Saturday at the shelter, just an idea.
Great minds think alike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next item, Chapter 38, Ethics Ordinance and Proposed Amendment.
Mayor, Commissioners, hi, good evening. Last meeting before that, we had a pretty good discussion on different ways to improve Chapter 38. We received consensus on most of the proposed changes, which I'll present to you today, which include application Chapter 38 to GBIC and BCSC, expanding the financial disclosure requirements. We talked about subpoena powers, and I will have a proposal that I hope captures the sentiments of all the commissioners that shared their thoughts. And I will be looking for input from you on that today. Also clarification about, excuse me, the EAC Ethics Advisory Commission deliberations in closed session. There's a clarification I wanted to make sure I got on the books following the meeting. And also the process for selection of outside counsel when there's a conflict of interest with when the complainant's a city commission member. Commissioner De Los Santos, you also mentioned one about expanding the window or the time frame for improper economic benefits from 6 months to a year. I looked into that, and it's a year right now, but if we want to expand that more, of course, that's something we can discuss.
I think I just might need to review that then to make sure that.
I thought the same thing, and I looked through it, but before we finally adopt it, I'll make sure that that's the case and not bring it as an amendment. The overall plan is to do a check-in today, make sure that I got the correct direction. If I've missed anything, I'll take notes and make those for a first reading next week. Then the plan is to, once we get that language, present it to the EAC because our next meeting will be
December.
December 7th. And so that gives us a chance. We have a slotted meeting with EAC the 2nd of December. So we'll be able to present the draft as adopted on first reading to them, and then that next week adopted in full by the city commission. And if there's any tweaks to it between EAC, we can make those noted. Now there are other issues that were discussed. I know Commissioner De Los Santos, you mentioned about expanding the qualifications for the preliminary panels. And also there was this, the summary dismissal power for the EAC, removal process for panel members, and then the one that garnered a lot of discussion, which was prohibiting city officials and their family members from applying for economic development incentives. Those are not in this presentation, but I'm bringing them back. But I just thought it garnered more discussion, more input for me to make sure I drafted something appropriate. But I did want to bring a draft on something that everybody had a general consensus on. And so that's the presentation today.
And Counselor, when you say you're bringing those back, even those that aren't included here tonight, do you mean at the next meeting?
I would like to set up a discussion and we can discuss those today. This is open up to all chapter 38. So we can discuss those after we go through these, or we can definitely set up for another workshop just to address those next week.
Very good.
So again, this is a summary of those that we'll be discussing today. I mentioned them at the beginning of my presentation. Here's the first one. These are not just in theory. I've actually drafted language for these. Some are more robust, and so I've made them into bullet points onto actionable items within those changes. But this one does address adding BCIC and GBEC to application of Chapter 38 under what a city official might be. This is a change that we've discussed under 38-156A1 for the financial disclosures. We've added the city auditor, GBEC, BCIC, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of Adjustments, and one I forgot to put on there was Public Utility Board. We discussed adding those employees and city officials that actually had a lot of authority and decision-making power on financial matters or land use type matters, quasi-judicial matters. So
I've got one on there. I think we're also missing the Building and Standards Commission because they have the power to condemn properties and order evictions and things of that nature.
does anybody else have? I'll make that change, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Here's the one that I really need input on. So what I've done is I did go back to reviewing a few cities that I'm familiar with that have a good track record and established a good plan for their city. What I did is I drew the best kind of notes from those cities and applied them to the discussions that were had at the last meeting. So this is a merging of those kind of the good points, but how does it apply to Brownsville? So I know there was a concern about subpoena power and the fact that if there's a criminal action happening, Commissioner Tetrault, you brought up that good point that, well, the DA's office is going to handle that. This is limiting the enforcement mechanism to a civil process. The civil process is already governed by the civil courts. And it's a two-step process, both with supermajority requirements. So the first step would be the EAC issues a subpoena by a supermajority. A subpoena is only as good as its enforcement mechanism. So this contemplates that the EAC may issue a subpoena for witnesses or discovery. In the case that a person does not comply with that subpoena, the EAC could take that into consideration in their deliberations and evaluating, what they should do in response. But the actual enforcement authority is left with the city commission, again, with supermajority. And it's limited to a civil, kind of a civil penalty procedure in which, for right now, we have it set at $500 per offense per occurrence. And that would be through a civil lawsuit brought by the city. But of course, the civil suit system, the civil process, court system has its own regulatory or kind of procedures to govern that process. Again, it kind of has a double vetting structure into it. Yes, Commissioner.
Can you define supermajority?
It's 75%.
75%.
Of 75% of those, of the actual entity. So those.
Not those present. It's
Correct. That's the way it's drafted. Anything?
So, Counselor, and I understand the double protection there, I agree with. However, what if the case involves a member of the city commission? Or even worse, what if it involves two city commissioners? Then it's impossible to ever reach a supermajority by the commission because those two would have to recuse themselves. You'll never get 6 votes.
We could, I mean, for the enforcement mechanism, and that's just a proposal that we have. If we want to do those president voting, we can as well. Or we can make a stipulation that accounts for those conflicted out that would have to abstain.
Let's think about that one a little more. I like the idea that it's the commission and a supermajority for any matters not involving the commission. I just think when it involves the commission, if ever, we need to have a backup plan for that.
Yeah, I think it would need to be a supermajority of the remaining members of the commission, maybe. That way you're still accomplishing the same thing.
If it's one, I think it's still the same number, but the problem comes when they're two.
Right.
I can add some language to that.
And if it's two, then I think it'd be easy to get a unanimous decision. You can just leave it at that.
Yeah. Some of these issues might resolve themselves, but I understand, set expectations beforehand.
Absolutely.
Any other? Deliberations, there was a question presented by the EAC Vice Chairperson and Commissioner De Los Santos as well after about, I made the statement, currently the EAC can deliberate in executive session, which TOMA applies. You can discuss legal matters in executive session, but what I wanted to make clear was that the deliberation process would still be governed in executive session, in closed session. That is allowed. It's just the decision itself has to be discussed, which is compliant with Texas Open Meetings. I just wanted to make it clear in the ordinance.
And that would be consistent with what EAC was requesting.
Yes.
Very good.
So here, this really is a bullet point. I, again, looked at cities of Denton, Plano, San Antonio, drew the best principles from there, but applied them to the discussion we had about selecting outside counsel when there's a conflict between the city attorney's office and the city commission, because the city commission, or the complainant would be a city commissioner. We talked about setting this rotating list of outside counsel that would be a random selection, but also impartial and biased. So what I listed here is that each city commission member can appoint one attorney to the list based on the qualifications that are there. There are 3 main qualifications: 5 years practicing in Texas, good standing with the State Bar of Texas, and a strong experience in internal investigations. Then those appointees will be assigned places 1 through 7, but by a random drawing of lots. That way there could be no issues or allegations that say, hey, those were placed in a specific order to accommodate certain commissioners or the mayor. And the last check on that is a conflict of interest provision that I've tailored to the way the Chapter 38 is currently written. And so it would be if that attorney is within a first degree of consanguinity, and that includes the law partners, employees, or interns of that attorney, or has a substantial economic interest, which is defined in Chapter 38, shared with any city official, employee, complainant, or witness. And they have 3 days to disclose that conflict. A failure to disclose that conflict would kick them off automatically and remove them, not just from the case, but from the list.
2 questions.
Sure.
What starts the clock on the 3 days?
The date that we're made aware that they knew.
Okay.
It's hard to, it would take a process, but.
And then my other question is, when we're talking about conflict, substantial economic interest is usually predetermined. I think at state levels, it's more than 10% of their income or something.
It's actually defined, a defined term in Chapter 38 already. And that's why I use that specific.
And where I'm going with it, this may help you with the answer, is what about clients? If it's a current or former client of one of those attorneys. It may not account for a substantial economic interest as far as the revenue they generated that firm, but if it's a former client, I think that would be a conflict.
Is that something that, that goes a little deeper than what this is proposing, but,
Kind of say that a little bit more concisely, Commissioner?
So if the attorney who's assigned to one of these cases, if one of the parties involved is a former client of his law practice, wouldn't that be a conflict for him in this role?
I'd say maybe current,
It's a-
current client. Because once you've kind of completed your services, in most legal cases, it's closed.
Well,
I
typically,
feel like it should go back to past as well.
I'm sorry.
I feel like it should go back to past clients as well.
an attorney's not going to get involved. They're gonna themselves point out a conflict, if anything like that exists. But if you want to put in a safeguard,
Could you, because especially with like larger law firms, they have like a conflict check that they have to do, of course, at all times. And then there are times when it's so big that they're able to kind of separate or build, what is that wall?
Chinese wall.
The conflict wall, right? And so I don't know if you want to limit it to clients of that specific attorney or add it, because here we have law partners, employees, interns. Whatever it's a kind of,
I'm satisfied with specific to the attorney. I don't think it needs to apply to the whole firm when we're talking about conflict of a client. Everything else, I think it's appropriate.
I'll add that. And then the terms would be 2 years, but they may be reappointed to successive terms. And then we did discuss the authorities, they would have investigative authority under Chapter 38, just like the EAC would, with the exception of issuing subpoenas. They would report back to the EAC. I think Commissioner Cardenas said, and raised a concern. I think also Commissioner Galansky raised a concern about how much money this would cost the city if we had to engage outside counsel. Limiting it to the 10-day window both reflects the response time that's required in setting up the evidentiary hearing, but also limits the time of the investigation itself to 10 days upon appointment. This is not meant to replace the evidentiary hearing itself. It's just meant to provide the EAC with information, recommendations and findings from essentially what I would have been doing at the time, but for my conflict would not be able to. And so in the same instance, the EAC it would be within their authority to kind of take my advice and then still make their own recommendations and decisions. So the EAC would not be limited to that report. It would just be to supplement the evidentiary hearing itself.
There's enough safeguards, though, the only way that these outside attorneys will get involved is if it involves a city commissioner or.
Correct.
Right.
Only time.
And if it passes the initial inspection of.
Preliminary panel, correct.
I have a question on that preliminary panel.
Yes.
When there's a commissioner or mayor involved, does the city attorney participate in that panel at that time, or will the outside counsel be replacing that?
It's set up right now to where the city attorney would take part in that.
And right now, it's the city attorney and the city manager are part of that panel, are they not?
But I think the point is, is it appropriate for the city attorney to remain on that panel if there's a city commission member involved in the complaint?
That's a good point.
and I mean, even the city manager, both.
Because they're both subordinate to the commission.
Yep.
And I think there are provisions in Chapter 38 that allow for a second member of the EAC to be brought on to the panel to take the place if someone has to conflict out. But we can explore if we want to keep that 2 members of the EAC or if we want to then engage the outside attorneys.
But would you like, because we're still going to have this discussion on the preliminary panel and the restructuring of that or a qualification set for that. And I think that's probably the meat of of what that conversation will include. Is this something you want me to put on this first, I guess, wave of amendments? Or do you still want to discuss it a little bit more, flesh it out a little bit more?
I think it warrants further discussion.
So with the recommendations or proposals I've demonstrated here, I'll bring that first clean draft next week. And I'll present it to EAC and then final adoption, hopefully the first meeting of December.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next item is presentations. LGBTQ+ Task Force presentation, City Manager's Office.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight, we have our co-chairs for the LGBTQ Task Force. I'm Marina Solesi with the City Manager's Office and the liaison for the task force. So we have Brian L. Martinez and Jose Colon Valles II. They'll be presenting their annual update. Thank you.
Welcome. We need an extra chair, Joe.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor. It's a pleasure and honor to be here in front of you in our capacity as the LGBTQ Task Force. We've been very careful about coming before you because we want to get it right. We realize that we want to make an impression on you and share all of the things we have been doing with the task force. So we put everything together for you in a short presentation.
So these are some of our members. We currently have one vacancy open. So hopefully the next round we can appoint someone to our board. Really a diverse group, so we want to make sure that all identities in our community are represented. So we're really happy to have the folks serving with us. It's also important to make sure that people understand, right, that our community is diverse, and yeah, we're very well represented. Obviously, the purpose of our group is to explore strategies. Let me take this off. To improve basically the wellness of our community, to promote policy changes, inclusivity, cultural competency, and we meet basically once a month. Third Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. We've been having our meetings now here at the public library, but before then they were obviously virtual.
Awesome. And I also add, we are coming up on our 2nd year anniversary in December. We were created in 2019. It's gone by very fast. Time goes fast when you're having a good time, they say. So one of our very initial challenges that we came across when we were formed is that this has never been done before. And so it was basically like a blank canvas. We didn't know what to do. What do we go to? What do we, So one of our very first ideas was create a survey, community survey. Let's reach out to the community and let's get their input. Let's see what the greatest needs are from their perspective, and by the same token with ourselves from our perspective. And let's combine those together, and then we can better see what we can work on within the community. Again, this was the purpose of the task force itself, to explore all of these inconsistencies in our community and the needs, most importantly, to be your eyes and ears really in the community, come back and report to you. So that is what we're doing today. The survey was from September through December, and we had around 150 responses from the community itself. Next slide, please. If you see, we did break it down between each of the districts. We also did have participation from outside of Brownsville. It's important to note that we are the very first municipality leading this effort. And so in a lot of our events that we had hosted, we saw big support from the Upper Valley as well, meaning to say that there is a big movement and community out there that does receive the benefits from all of the efforts that we do here in Brownsville, Texas.
I also want to add that potentially those are people who used to live in Brownsville but don't live in Brownsville anymore. We want to see these changes happen in our community.
So we did list the top 5 important or relevant key issues that we received from this survey. The first was to create some kind of outreach resource center for individuals in the community whom are looking for resources and or need assistance specific to an LGBTQ cause. We have continuously explored and looked for partners within the community to provide that for people who come to us to seek those kinds of assistance. We had a 70% rate. That was the greatest need that we saw in our community. They wanted just like a safe space to come maybe like a city office, something of that nature where we could direct them and have the resources there for them available. The second was to create some kind of non-discrimination ordinance to propose for you the idea. Three was creating a healing and educational resource, again, to provide a platform for individuals to be able to go and look for resources. Four was to establish some trainings. We've seen in other municipalities across the state that there has been trainings in place for businesses and/or individuals who are not familiar with the LGBTQ realm. By that, I mean pronouns. You know, how do you address somebody who of a trans individual? And it's not disrespect, but it's just lack of education. And sometimes even myself as a homosexual, I didn't know what that meant sometimes. So I had to look into it. And if I didn't know that, how can I expect somebody else in the community to do so? And so we felt that that was one of the ways that we could provide the educational portion of it, is by providing these competencies, trainings that we're going to go a little bit more into depth in the couple of slides. And last but not least, a youth LGBTQ mentorship program. We have opened up some conversations with BASD about a GSA, maybe citywide, not necessarily district-based, but this is another approach that we've seen that we can take with the community to be able to provide more inclusivity within our beloved city. Next slide, please.
So this is our logo contest. This is part of our outreach and education aspect of the work that we've been doing. We were very grateful to have community partners, businesses, local businesses support the work that we've been doing. This is part of a long-term strategy for our group to essentially, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's essentially part of our safe space program strategy. So we were basically looking to find a way to brand our group and brand the work that we've been doing in a way where people could recognize the logo potentially out of business and feel that that's a safe space for them to enter. So this was a contest that we did. These are some of the businesses that supported the work that we were doing. This is our logo, the logo that we've been using now. We have stickers. Hopefully we can distribute some of those to y'all to have for yourselves, but this is a logo that we kept from one of our residents in the city of Brownsville, Luis Garcia. The work that we're doing now currently is also part of conversations we've been having continuously about the case of Kimberly Avila, a transgender nonconforming person who has gone missing from our city. She's been missing for over 4 years. Her family is still in distress. We've had meetings with our state representatives, the chief of police, and just having opportunities to partner with community groups as well, to hold vigils and to continue pushing the case and to make sure that people are aware that this is still ongoing. Kimberly is still missing. This is really important because gender nonconforming people face the highest rates of violence within our community. Even as LGBTQ people, they are oftentimes the most marginalized within our demographic. And so we just want to remind people that there is that they can call Brownsville Crime Stoppers if they know any information, and that there is a reward and all calls remain anonymous. So if anybody who is watching today's meeting has any information that they can provide, that would be very helpful. We also want to thank our city comms marketing department, who was very willing to help us earlier this year to put out a press release for the anniversary of her disappearance. And we continue to push this conversation amongst all the other great things that we're doing in Brownsville. So yeah, part of our education and outreach is really just sort of creating spaces of visibility for our community, promoting history and cultural awareness, also making sure that there's an economic impact and sort of economic understanding of the work that we're doing when we're celebrating Pride. We saw a huge boom in businesses this year in the city of Brownsville promoting Pride celebrations, venues hosting events. So that was, you know, microeconomies that are happening within the community that are helping promote businesses within the city of Brownsville.
We hosted our second annual Pride flag raising this year. The first time we did so, we did it at the same location, which was CVB, our visitor center. It was a very neat experience to see so many people come out, not just from Brownsville itself, but people from the Upper Valley as well, coming down here. Unfortunately, the very first year, the flag was stolen and the building was vandalized. In our eyes, it brought a lot of awareness towards our task force and the issues that we were trying to bring awareness to. And so we saw that as an advantage, and we took the advantage of it, and we got a lot more awareness from the community in terms of who we were and what we were doing. It was a very neat experience. The city has been such a great support in terms of these events that we try to put on in their community. One of the purposes, again, is promoting inclusivity within our community. It was nice to see people tagging us on Facebook with their coming out stories with this picture itself, feeling home, feeling safe, but feeling at home, being able to come back to Brownsville and be proud of who you are. Wherever you're from, I got myself messages from people who left Brownsville. They're just very proud to see this flag being raised here in the valley, which is not as common as we would think that it is. Next slide, please.
Continuing the work that we've been doing when it comes to visibility for Pride, also, we're really excited to partner with the Brownsville Wellness Coalition to promote the idea of visibility as wellness. Because if you don't feel seen in your community, then oftentimes that leads to negative outcomes. So we were really excited to partner with Brownsville Wellness Coalition. I want to thank Beto and all her team for allowing us the opportunity to set up camp during the farmers market, to one of the farmers market during June. We had a lot of, basically like a resource fair. We had story time with our task force. We had a lot of attendance. A lot of people were just, again, really excited to see these things happening in our community. And also to be able to touch base with resources that are available to them that cater to services when it comes to both mental health, even spirituality. We had Mount Calvary Church come. They're a queer affirming church here in the Rio Grande Valley, which is oftentimes very important for people in our community. Friendship of Women, Valley AIDS Council. So really great opportunity for a resource for people to come and know what resources are available to them, existing not just in Brownsville, but in the Rio Grande Valley at large.
May I add really quick? It was very neat to see the community support. A lot of the vendors at the farmers market made special LGBTQ or Pride products. There was rainbow popcorn, rainbow paletas. There was a lot of rainbow merch. They all sold out. According to the executive director, it was one of the most successful Saturdays that they've had because it brought in a lot of people. So we've been in talks of continuously doing that, hopefully maybe once a quarter, or we can do it biannually, something where we can continue to promote that inclusivity and have people come and feel safe. That was one of the whole purposes of creating this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. No, people get really excited at these events because they finally are like, this is my home. I finally feel seen. And I know that there are people like me out there, and it's just really important to make sure that that's continuously emphasized. So this is part of our continuing events. Pride Pub probably worked with some of the businesses in downtown Brownsville to promote a event to celebrate Pride. It kicked off at the historic Palm Lounge, and we had voter registration services being provided also for folks who wanted to register to vote. And folks were, strongly encouraged to wear their masks. These are some of the celebrations that we had. Aeon Mavis York, one of our drag activists from here in Brownsville, Texas, show up and host the event for us. And continuing the work that we've been doing through our meetings. Whenever we have meetings once a month, we do invite partners, community groups, nonprofits to come do a presentation at our meeting because we want to share our platform. Because again, this is the first time our community is being represented. It's the first time we have a seat at the table, and we want to make sure that we share that opportunity with others. So see, these are some of the lists of some of the organizations that we've highlighted. And even just last month, we had Friendship of Women, which didn't make the cut onto the list here, but they did do a presentation on interpersonal violence and LGBTQ communities, which is something that sometimes isn't always often talked about.